Chapter 1 of the Pokemon Creepypasta Weeping Cubone, the sequel to Pokemon Dark Version. The events of this story take place a week after the ending of the Pokemon Dark Version story. Valerie sat like a stone in her confined room, still bound by the spell of the pendant swaying in front of her. It made her feel safe, at peace within the chaos surrounding her. Somehow the hypnotic experience suppressed Valerie's horrific memories of the demise of her 3 closest friends, numbing her of the trauma caused by Pokemon Dark Version. Occasionally she was fed, given medication, taken to the bathroom, and put to bed at night. These things she did not care much for, only the device she could not help but stare mindlessly at for hours. It made things easier for her doctors, one less reckless wound to put up with. One night, when she was about to fall into slumber and dream yet again of the pendant, as she did every night, a low but eerie voice came to her in the darkness.
"Sleeping so soon? You have work to do, dearie."
Valerie rubbed her bloodshot eyes and sat up in her bed. "Work?" she asked.
"Oh yes, there is much to be done."
The low voice whirled about her head, as if coming from thin air. Valerie trembled a bit as the eyeless Hypno slowly appeared before her from the shadows. Its empty eye sockets flashed an unbearably bright light into her face, and she looked away, squeezing her eyes shut tightly. The overbearing light made her extremely dizzy and disoriented, but she felt free of her obsession with the pendant and abnormal hallucinations. Falling back and collapsing onto her bed, she immediately blacked out. It was now 3 a.m, dark and lonely as ever. Valerie found herself in Ted's apartment, which was covered in police tape and condemned. She could not recollect how she had gotten inside, but felt nervous. "Ted?" she called out, mustering some courage. Her voice faded into the dark apartment. A small light flickered to life atop his coffee table. It was coming from the Game Boy Color he had been using shortly before his death. Valerie slowly walked up to the light and picked up the Game Boy to see an image of a young man lying dead on the gravel below the bridge he had jumped off. Valerie gasped in horror. She recognized the young man as Ted, certain of it. She watched as a text box appeared that read, "I saw no other way out, Valerie. I'm sorry." Then the screen flickered a bit and went dead. The young woman stood there paralyzed in disbelief and terror as she tried to accept what she had just seen. She did not doubt it was true, remembering how Keith had died from the game. Valerie took the Game Boy with her as she left to visit the bridge the suicide had occurred at. She knew it had to be the one right by Ted's apartment. The labelings from the image she had seen were identical. Not caring that she was still in a light mental patient garment, she walked down the sidewalk until she came to the bridge. Coming up to a spot not far from the entrance, Valerie spotted a small memorial site near the railing. It was littered with flowers around a small cross. Swallowing dreadfully, she quickly approached and inspected it to see Ted's name scrawled into the wooden cross. She could not deny this. It was now she was certain her friend was dead. She fought back tears as she peered over the edge into the abyss below, giving it a long gaze before throwing Ted's Game Boy at it with all her strength. Upon hitting the asphalt far down below, it shattered into fragments of plastic and metal, the final copy of Pokemon Dark Version now destroyed. Valerie felt a slight sense of relief, knowing no one could be hurt by the games anymore. She heard a cackle coming up from the abyss, and saw the Hypno's ghost rising to meet her as it sneered.
"That won't help you much."
Valerie glared at the spirit bitterly. "Why won't you leave me alone?" she asked. The grin on the Pokemon's face widened as it twirled its pendant about on its finger.
"Oh, I can't do that, dearie. You brought this upon yourself."
The young woman scowled and turned, walking away. The Hypno's voice followed her.
"There is no place you can hide from me. I will be with you always."
With an eerie laugh, the voice faded into the darkness. Valerie had no idea where she was going, but felt it was in the right direction, as long as it was away from where all these tragedies had happened. She wished she could see her friends one last time, then suddenly she wondered what had happened to Erica, fearing she was also dead. She rushed back to Ted's apartment, entering through the exit she took, and hurried to his phone hanging from the kitchen wall to dial Erica's number. Valerie bit her lip anxiously as she hoped for an answer. It went straight to her friend's voicemail, which had been changed. It was her mother's voice. To those it may concern, Erica has been hospitalized. She will not be coming home. If you wish to visit her, this is the address of the hospital. Valerie hurried to find paper and a pen, but stopped as she recognized the address of the hospital. It was close by. Slamming the phone back in place, she hurried out of Ted's apartment and rushed down the sidewalk. After running down a few blocks, she came to the large white building. Charging inside, she alarmed a few half-asleep hospital workers at the front. "Are you all right?" one of them asked. "I'm fine," she panted, out of breath. "I need to see Erica Lau, please." One of the women looked through a list on a clipboard. When her eyes fell on a particular name, she closed them and let out a long, quiet breath. Erica Lau passed away last night. She was taken off her life support because her mother could no longer afford it. Valerie's jaw quivered. "Life support? What happened to her?" she stammered, clearly becoming upset. The woman gave Valerie a sympathetic look, answering, "She was found brain dead. Special machines here kept her alive, but her mother just couldn't make the payments. I'm very sorry." Valerie shook her head, trying hard not to accept what she was hearing. "This can't be happening. It can't." She ran out of the hospital and into the darkness, looking for somewhere safe and warm, away from all the noise and cars and buildings. She remembered a forest was just down the road, untouched by civilization. Hurrying through the hospital's large parking lot, she ignored the pain of her bare feet pounding against the hard asphalt, too upset to care. All she wanted right now was a quiet place. Running madly into the night, she eventually stumbled into the woods, nearly tripping over a fallen tree limb. She sat down behind a massive tree, feeling quite hidden and secluded. Trying to fight back the waves of tears, she brushed her filthy feet off and realized she would have to find some clothes. Right now that was the least of her concerns. Leaning her throbbing head back against the tree trunk, she felt a soothing breeze gently whisper against her tear-stained face. It brought a slight sense of solace to her, but with the breeze came a gentle cry. Valerie stood up, thinking it might be a small child. She nervously followed the mourning and eventually spotted a small brown animal. Hiding behind a tree quickly, she watched as it wailed and wept like a human, standing erect on its haunches. Valerie noticed its face was white and it had horns protruding from the top of its head. It was holding something blunt. She wiped her eyes and squinted to get a better look. It was now she realized it was wearing some sort of helmet and holding what appeared to be a bone. It ceased its mourning for a brief moment and looked directly at her. She hushed a frightened squeal as she ducked behind the tree.
"Guide me to my mother. Save me."
The voice grew stronger until Valerie felt the creature was right around the corner. She peeked over the edge of the tree to see it had disappeared, and the voice faded with the passing breeze.